Thanks so much.
Okay, well, hi all. I'm Bruce Stewart. A lot of you I have met over the years. This is the first time we've actually done this webinar on opening up a business. It's something that we've been doing on a fairly regular basis in helping people open up, expand their businesses into the United States. But because the primary focus has always been on getting visas, we've never really touched on this as a possible way of getting into the United States by expanding your business. And, when we did the last webinar on refugees, I was planning to do one on visas. But looking at a number of people who have recently done these moves through business expansion, I thought this would be an ideal opportunity to look at this aspect and to see whether there's any mileage to be gotten out of it. Just a bit of housekeeping. I see you are all on mute. If you can keep your microphones on mute, that would be great. And as Di said, please send us your questions in the chat box. We'll get them. And just as a point of disclaimer, we are not immigration lawyers and we're not providing you with any legal advice or legal services. We see ourselves as educators. And the reason for this is legal advice sort of narrows down on what I can tell you. There are a number of reasons for that. Lawyers are fairly restricted in what they can tell you and what they can't tell you, and the implications if you divulge information to a lawyer, and that locks you out of a particular type of visa, well, you're locked out of that visa because you have in fact spoken to a lawyer and therefore he can't file a visa, which would be in contravention of what you've told him. As educators, you can tell me anything and I'm not going to give you legal advice. I'm going to give you educational advice. So I can talk about a lot of things that the lawyers are not going to talk about. And our job is to help you avoid making the bad decisions or losing money on lost causes, and to help you avoid making the expensive mistakes we made. The lawyers that we work with, and if we feel that you need an attorney, we'll refer you to some of the attorneys that we've investigated and that we feel very confident with because they've provided excellent service and their rates are very reasonable. They love the work that we do because we send them smart clients who are educated about the visa path that you're choosing to do. The attorneys that we don't support don't particularly like us because bad attorneys generally don't like smart clients. So we're not going to give you any legal advice. This is purely educational and anecdotal. Right, just in terms of copyright, a lot of the material here is copyright protected, so please, it's not for recording. I will make a recording of these, but it's primarily for our internal purposes. And those people who have attended and who've given their apologies for not being able to make it, I know that one of the gentlemen is delayed on a flight, and he sent me an urgent message saying his flight hasn't landed. Can we have a copy? So I am making a copy of this recording, and I'm just letting you know that I am doing so. Now, a little bit of background to Diane and myself. We moved here in 2001 from Johannesburg. We had two small children. I'm a contractor with the Department of Defense. Diane focuses on PR marketing and social media. She started Pathway back in 2006 because we had an absolute disastrous experience with our immigration. It took us just over 19 years between arriving in the US and getting citizenship. And that included self-deportation to Ireland, and it cost us a bomb of money. Our case was covered by most of the media. They made a documentary movie about the Stewarts' fight to stay in the United States. Time magazine had an article, Fox News had an article, radio stations did interviews, because we made so many mistakes because the information that you get from Google is not always reliable. And really, Google will tell you some things, but they won't tell you other things. And as Di says regularly, the most dangerous information is the information that you don't know that you don't know. And that was the problem we made. We focused all about the visa. We didn't know what questions to ask. And so we started PathwayUSA to really educate people before you start this road. So you look at the holistic approach to immigration. It's not just about how you get a visa. It's how you get into the country, but also how you make a success of your life once you're here. And that's where we made our mistake. We just focused on the visa side of it, and we didn't look about the relocation side. And that's probably as important, if not more important, than the visa. So we identified this real need, and we wanted to become independent and unbiased. Some people say that I'm brutally honest. If I think you've got no chance, I'll tell you to go to another country, that you're not going to get into the United States. You're welcome to get a second opinion, but so far I've never been wrong. We've been doing this for a while, and so far we've got a very good success rate in, if I tell you can get in, yes, you can take that to the bank, you're going to get in. If I tell you no, well, go find somewhere else, and you can also take that to the bank. We became citizens in 2020. Probably the greatest decision that we made. Even though we had 19 and plus years of heartbreak, it was worth every single minute of every cent that we spent on finally achieving what we wanted to achieve. We wrote a book about our experience, called Scars and Stripes, A Journey Through the Immigration System. So it covers two aspects. One is the legal side of the sort of problems that we experience. Some of the visas we go into in a lot of detail, because these were visas that we fought to get renewed, and appeals and so forth. We speak about the private bills, which is a piece of legislation that we actually introduced to the House, to try and force the government to give it. Well, we failed on that one as well. But also there's the human side of giving up your life and your family and your friends, and the costs of doing so. It is a major, major decision that you're doing by moving through. So if you'd like to take a screenshot of this one, but it's an easy domain name to remember, scarsandstripesbook.com. We wrote it for two audiences. One is people who are thinking about moving to the US. It'll give you the hidden story that not many people know about. But also we wrote it for the American population who have no concept of what their immigration system is all about. And hopefully we can get them to be a little bit more understanding that this immigration system, which is totally dysfunctional, needs a total revamp. Now, when we started looking at this, the big change came with COVID. Up until COVID, business was very much a face-to-face thing. Customers wanted to see you face to face. Employers wanted to see you actually in the office. COVID changed all of that. And the first change that we saw is, up until COVID, if you wanted a bank account in the United States, you actually had to get your ass across here, and get into a bank. They wanted to see you face to face. Well, COVID basically said that that's not going to work. So that started hampering how banks could do business with their international clients. And that was one of the first moves that we saw, is that some of the banks would in fact open up accounts virtually. And that started a sort of a move towards people looking at their own companies and saying, what sort of business can I do internationally to open up and get into an international market where I don't actually have to get on a plane? Now, I teach advanced reading skills to the military, and I often describe reading, especially when it comes to novels, as a sort of virtual travel. You can travel in your mind to places that you can't travel with your body. And that's what's happened to business, is we can now do business virtually all over the world. And I'm just going through some of the businesses that we've been looking at and some of the businesses that we've supported. So anybody who's doing consulting and coaching work, there's a huge move now where you can actually provide those training courses virtually via Zoom. Pathway is a perfectly good example. Di and I used to travel to South Africa at least 2 to 3 times a year to meet with people. COVID stopped that. Now we can do this. And in fact, most people prefer to do these one-on-one meetings with us via Zoom. You don't have to get in your car and travel to wherever I'm located, which is an hour of traffic if you're in a big city. And then it's an hour meeting or a 2-hour meeting with me, and it's an hour back. So there's a 4-hour time that you've got to do. And then we've got to sort of work with one another, whereas doing it via Zoom is so much easier. A lot of people are now doing freelancing work, writing, editing, web design, graphic design. Somebody recently has moved to the United States, but for years they were doing package design for American companies, but they were based in South Africa, doing all of the design work in South Africa. Social media is another one that you can do virtually, virtual assistants. Of course, you will all know about the app development, which is huge in terms of the app designers in India, where they're designing and building mobile and web applications. I know of a company here in Charlotte that is based here, but for all of their web development, they actually outsource that to primarily South African web designers and Indian web designers, simply because the skills are very good in those countries, and he can buy those skills a lot cheaper in South Africa than he would be paying for those skills in the United States. So there's huge market for that. Somebody else who does architectural and engineering design and blueprints can also be done virtually. Then there's SEO consulting, there's e-commerce, digital services, and then of course drop shipping. Drop shipping is something, those of you who do any shopping with Amazon, a lot of people who are advertising on Amazon actually never see the product. They just advertising a product, and when you purchase it, they send the purchase order directly through to the supplier, and the supplier then does the delivery. So the people that you actually buying the products from never touch the product, they never see the product. They're just making money out of those projects. Now, if any of you on this webinar, on this call, can think of any other businesses that lend themselves to this sort of international expansion, please let me know of them. I'm sort of building a database of the types of companies that will look at this, because we've had so many people who've actually already started this in various fields, and I'd like to open up this conversation as much as possible. Now, if you've got a business in your home country, tap into the world's largest economy, and it's a lot easier than you think. First of all, you need a US address and a registered agent stroke company secretary for your company. That's the first one. Secondly, we need to establish a US corporation. Now, there are different types of corporations that you can establish. We have C corporations, which is like a PTY Limited. You've got an LLC, which is a little bit like the closed corporation in South Africa. I always go for the C corporation for a number of reasons. If you ever thinking of looking at an intra-company transfer, you want to have a C corporation. You need an EIN, which is an employer identification tax number, which you've got to get from the IRS, and you need a company bank account. All of this we do for you. So we'll figure out the name with you. We'll register the name and get the corporation registered. I serve as your registered agent, stroke company secretary, and my address and email and telephone number all becomes the telephone and email addresses of your registered company that you've got in the United States. And once I've got those two set up, then I contact the IRS and I get you an employee identification number, which is basically the social security number for your company. All companies must have an EIN tax number, and you file your taxes under the EIN. And then obviously, as an officer of your company, I can go and open up a bank account. So it's a pretty straightforward thing, just a certain amount of paperwork. Then next one, second thing that we'll do is you need to have legally accessible financials. I use QuickBooks simply because I'm familiar with them. So I open up a set of financials for you. I appoint a certified public accountant. We don't use CAs, chartered accountants, in this country. It's not necessary. In many countries around the world, at the end of the year, the chartered accountant is supposed to actually come and do an audit of your company in order to file off your annual tax returns. Here in this country, it is not necessary. At the end of the year, I print out your financials, your profit and loss, and your balance sheet. I send those down to the certified public accountant, and he prepares your tax returns for your company. And if necessary, he'll prepare the tax returns for yourself. And then all I do is I go in and sign these things. So they don't actually do an audit. So if anybody ever talks about they're getting an audit done. You're not having an audit by a chartered accountant. You're getting an audit by the IRS themselves, and you have a quiet hissy fit when the IRS says they're coming to do an audit. It is a fairly comprehensive exercise. But, the CPAs that I use are very good in terms, most of them have worked for the IRS. And they're excellent at producing tax returns, and we never have queries on these things. And I would then be your agent in the United States. This is not the degree to which I'm your agent really depends on the type of business you're doing, how much activity you need from us. But remember, this is a business that you are comfortably running at the moment. And a lot of your clients, if, for example, you're in the UAE or in the UK or in South Africa, you probably have clients in a different city. So a lot of your work is probably already being done virtually. The difference between doing business in another city and another country is actually it's a very small leap because we're still only a phone call or an email address. So here are some examples of clients of ours that have already been down this road. So Mark owned an IT company in South Africa, and he wanted to expand into the USA and earn some dollars. We established his company in the United States. We helped him find more US clients. Obviously, we got him a website built that was hosted in the United States. The company that we use also has a very, very big database facility, so you don't have to use any of the third-party email systems. You can use Sean's eBlast system. It works extremely well. I use it for Pathway. I use it for my speed reading company. Di uses it for her PR marketing company. So it's a very easy one to integrate and expand and get yourself a presence. And then he started building up his client base in the United States. He services them from South Africa, and yet he invoices them from the United States. So even though he's talking to these people, when they want something done, he does all the client service work from South Africa, but the invoice is from the United States company and the remittance is to the United States company. So he's earning dollars, which is at a lower company tax rate than, for example, South Africa, UK, or Germany. A current corporate tax rate in the United States is 21%. South Africa is 27%, UK 25%, Germany 30%. So instead of doing business in the United States and having your clients pay you in South Africa or if in a foreign country, where you've got a certain amount of forex that you've got to worry about, your tax rate in those companies is higher than your tax rate's going to be in the United States. So you actually keep this money offshore. So that was Mark's business that he set up. Then Mark owned and managed companies. Now, this was one where he already had multiple companies. He had one in South Africa, one in Mauritius, and one in the UK selling proprietary software. It was a program that he wrote. He's based in Hyde Park in Johannesburg. He ultimately told me that he wanted to emigrate to the United States, but he wanted to set up a financial presence in the US well before actually going down the path of immigration. So the first thing we did is we established a new company in the United States, and we helped him start promoting the software. And for a year, he traveled between South Africa and the USA in order to get this company up and moving. Now, just on this point of working in the United States, the law says that unless you have an employment-based visa, you're not allowed to work in the United States. But by work, they mean earn remuneration in the United States. But since he was traveling here, working for his South African company, he was not working in the United States in the sense of earning money. He was here representing his South African company. So any money that was being billed or paid in the United States was not being paid to him. It was being billed by his South African company to a US client who was paying the South African client. And all that Marco was doing is he was here to meet with clients and facilitate the installation and the necessary tweaking of the software. But his salary continued to be paid by the South African company. And I think it's an important thing to realize is when they say you can't work in this country, lots of people come here to work. So, for example, if you are coming to meet with clients, or you are coming to explore new business opportunities, or you're coming to open up an office, or you're coming here to employ people, as long as you are acting on behalf of the overseas employer, and you're not earning an income personally in this country, and your wages are being paid into your overseas bank account for any work that you're doing, you are not working. You're not employed in this country. You're simply working in this country. If you can see the distinction, and that catches a lot of people out, especially when it comes to languages. Somebody was actually offered a holiday on a horse farm. It was a student who was offered a bit of a holiday on a horse farm. They were not going to pay her a wage. They were just going to give her free board and lodging. She was coming here as a sort of a 3-month sabbatical. And when she arrived at the airport, now she was Afrikaans speaking, and when she translated to English, and they asked her what she's doing, she said, "I'm coming to work on a horse farm." Well, they immediately arrested her, detained her, because she used that word work, which generally speaking means if you're working, you're getting paid for your services. But in the situation we're talking about, you're coming to do work, but you're not being paid for those services. So he traveled between South Africa and the USA employing staff. The US company then successfully petitioned for a multinational manager green card for his family. Because he was now a manager of companies in South Africa, Mauritius, and the UK, we'd now opened up a company for him in the United States. He was also the managing director of the US company. So because of the multiplicity of companies, we could file for a green card as a multinational manager. He came across on a green card. It took 18 months, I think it was, before he got his green card, and 5 years later, they became US citizens. So opening up a company here, if you've got an overseas company and you open up a company in the United States, ultimately it could have the potential for getting a green card. But we've got to look at all of that right up front, if that's what your ultimate intention might be. So here, Watson had an engineering solutions company in Zimbabwe. He already had a number of clients in the USA and Canada, but they were paying him all the way back to Zimbabwe. He didn't really want that, but he'd always been told that he couldn't, if he wasn't in the United States and he didn't have a visa, he couldn't have a company in the United States. Well, that was incorrect advice that he got. So PathwayUSA established a new company in the USA, our address, our telephone number, our email address as the official email address, and I served as the registered agent stroke company secretary of the client. So once we'd set up the US company, he now invoices his US clients and Canadian clients out of the US company. They pay the US company. He now comes to the USA regularly to meet with clients, to set up an office, and employing engineers. He's buying vehicles. He's signing leases on properties. So he's literally setting up a presence for his Zimbabwean company. He's setting up a legal presence in the United States to gradually transfer the head office out of Zimbabwe, and he will ultimately transfer his head office to the United States. So other than earning dollars, he will soon qualify for, now because he's only got the Zimbabwe company and the US company, at this stage, the quickest bet would be to go for an intra-company transfer, because he now could have the US company petitioning for him to transfer to the US to come and manage the US operation. And that would be because the L1 visa is a dual intent visa. Ultimately, he could use that as an opportunity to convert from a non-immigrant visa to an immigrant visa and get a green card and ultimately US citizenship. Now, I know some of you might not be familiar with all of these visas. My next webinar next month is going to be to talk about these visas. And that's why I've linked these two together so that if you just wanting to, and I think I've got that in the next slide, if I can get that. Okay, I'll come back to this in a moment in terms of those visas. So remember, here's the critical stuff. First one is we need to register US corporation. I will serve as your registered agent and company secretary. If you have somebody else, if you've got a friend in this country that you want them to do it, absolutely. I'm not insisting that I do it, but I'm used to doing these things. And if you get a buddy to do it, they maybe not au fait with the legalities of what's got to be filed and when it's got to be filed. So most of my clients rather let me do it as opposed to having a friend do it. If you're paying me, I have a responsibility. If your buddy's doing it because of he likes you, well, if he forgets, we're friends. I also provide the registered address, the IRS registration. I open up the bank account for you, open up a set of books of accounting, and I appoint a CPA for statutory filings. Obviously, once you get here, you've now got this complete set of financials. As I say, I use QuickBooks. I've still got the old desktop version, which I'm familiar with and which I like and which is a whole lot cheaper. But if you, when you ultimately move to the United States or you would like to take over the financial function of the United States, you can import this from QuickBooks into the new versions of QuickBooks. And I think you can convert QuickBooks into any of the other financial packages. But right now I work in QuickBooks. Then the next one is the additional support services, which we do. So if you need a website in South Africa, and I know that you might feel that your overseas website is sufficient, but I found when I moved to the United States, my website was hosted in South Africa, and I found that when I was emailing people, because my emails were going through multiple hops between South Africa and the recipient in the United States, that some of their anti-spam protocols blocked these overseas emails coming from South Africa to a US website. Also found that in Turkey, where you're communicating with people through multiple hops on your server, it slows it down, and very often these things will get blocked. So there is reason to have a website in the United States which is hosted by servers in the United States. Sean not only hosts, but he also has a company that builds these things. He builds his website from scratch, and they are fully integrated with everything. So you want e-blast facilities, they're integrated in his websites. You want e-commerce shopping, credit card processing, integration with financial packages. You're not using third-party apps. It's all integrated into the Morphogene platform. So there are reasons for getting a website that is in the same country or fairly proximate to where your clients are. It increases the speed. We're also able to provide PR marketing and social media and get you exposed on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And there are a whole bunch of these things that Di specializes in, and that's a service that's available as well. And then including building up your database. Once we know what sort of company, what sort of business you're in, we can facilitate starting to collect and build a database of all of your prospective clients, because obviously the best way of communicating with them is going to be through PR marketing and social media. I'm not a great one for traditional advertising. It's expensive, especially in the US media, and it depends. If you're working locally within a particular city, then it's not too bad. But if you've got to start buying advertising in the national media, it's very expensive. And these days, the most effective advertising tends to be social media using LinkedIn, TikTok. So Di actually re-looks at your LinkedIn pages, your Facebook pages, setting up company Facebook pages and Instagram, and will get all of that stuff set up for you. And then building this database. And as I say, the Morphogene website, the Morphogene platform includes a very easy way. All of the emails that I send out all done on the website. We generate these emails, and we've got integrated eBlast marketing. So it's a sort of a turnkey thing. It's telling me we've got an internet connection which is unstable. Di, can you still hear me all right? Diane is on mute at the moment. Okay, we'll come back to that. Now, while some of the clients are only interested in expanding their business in the USA, others see this as a stepping stone to getting a visa to live and work in the USA. So what I've covered here is if you don't want to move to the United States and you have no immediate intention of moving to the United States, but would like to earn dollars and pay less tax than you are paying in. Okay, so just recap on this one. So if your intention right now is purely to expand your business in the United States, yeah, give us a call and let's talk about setting this up, because then it's fairly straightforward. We'll look at your business, we'll look at the components we need to put together. If you at this stage look at this as being potentially wanting to get a visa to look and work in the USA, then probably a good idea is to attend my webinar next month. It's July 23rd. Also, same time, July 23rd, and I'll be talking about visas and how we can integrate a visa in as part of the stepping process of using this business that you're going to open up as a pathway to, Marina couldn't get in, as a potential pathway to getting a visa or a green card to move to the United States. I hope that was clear after all of those interruptions. So, expanding your business, schedule a Zoom call with us to discuss the road ahead. You can just email us at www.pathwayusa.us, contact, and we can talk about setting up a company for you. If you want to talk about visas, yeah, let me know, and we can set up something we can talk about visas specifically, or attend the webinar next month. As I say, the next one is Wednesday, 23rd of July. And a bit of a commercial thing on this one. Basically, what we do in dealing with visas, we educate you about all of your visa options. There are over 100 different visas. So I start off with getting you to do a questionnaire, and I get some basic information about you, your skills, your family, your work experience, because I'm not going to talk about all 100 visas. So I use the questionnaire to narrow down the ones that I think are the best options that we should be talking about. We'll talk about visa qualifying requirements. We talk about the pros and cons of each visa. And yes, visas do have advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantages can be huge if they have an impact on you. And that's why it's important that I know what your long-term goals and intentions are, so that we can basically look at those visas that have as few disadvantages as possible. And it empowers you to make informed decisions about your future. You know, there's a big difference between if you want to come here to the United States for a short period of time to try it out and make some decent money and then possibly go home. Or if you want to keep your options open and say, listen, I want to come to the United States. I'm not firm about making this permanent, but I'd like to have the option of staying if I choose to do so. Well, that automatically puts us in a different category of visas. Or if you're saying, listen, I want to get out of my home country right now and I want to start and go straight to green card, well, there are visas that do take you straight to green card. All of these would require the use of an immigration attorney. And instead of paying an attorney a huge amount of money and asking him to educate you about your options, it's a whole lot more beneficial because I can tell you things about visas that attorneys cannot tell you. And eventually, once we narrow it down to what visa you should be going for, I'll put you in touch with an attorney who specializes in that particular type of visa. And then you can have an intelligent, informed decision, and you know what questions to ask, because you now know a lot about the visas, about the qualifying requirements and how it impacts you. You can have an intelligent discussion with your attorney. So if you are thinking of an ultimate move to the United States, certainly something worth looking at. We are impartial and we're totally honest. If you've got a lousy case, I'm going to tell you that you've got a lousy case. Yeah, some people don't like, you want to shoot the postman because the truth might hurt. And then maybe it's not what you want to hear. But it could save you heartbreak and it could save you a huge amount of dollars. US immigration is not cheap. And rather spend a little bit of money with me and hopefully you don't get bad news, but you waste a little bit of money, but you paid for bad news, that go down this path with an attorney and find that you had no chance whatsoever. And we have got horrific stories that we can tell you about people who've come to us after investing huge amounts of money in the United States, chose the wrong visa, picked it up all the advice off the internet, came here, got an initial visa, but never got it renewed. And then they had to have a fire sale on their businesses and basically give up everything that they'd had. And then they come to us and say, can we fix it for them? Well, no, once your house is burned down, you can't come and ask for insurance. So we try to prevent these things from happening well before they happen, before you commit yourself, before you change your lives, and before you spend a huge amount of money. So read our book, Scars and Stripes, because we went down this rabbit hole. Took us 20 years and cost us in excess of 400,000 US dollars by the time we eventually came out the other side of that. Then we saw so many people at the same time who just said, oh, to hell with this. We're going back home again. They just bailed because they got themselves into such a mess. I had the advantage that, first of all, I speak English. Secondly, I have a law degree, so I know my way around US legislation. And fortunately, I was working for the military, so I had a good, reliable income stream that could feed this voracious immigration monster that consumes your finances at a prolific rate. So, yeah, we had a lot of advantages that helped us, but we saw so many people fall by the wayside because of inadequate planning. So, reminder, our next one is July 23rd, same time. It's 1400 hours Eastern Standard Time. You can do the conversion, and I would suggest you book. I know that there have been quite a lot of bookings for that one already. So please, might as well, as soon as we finish this, go to PathwayUSA.us, and on the homepage, you'll see a link where you can go and register for this webinar. And I think that's about it. If you need to contact us, info@PathwayUSA.us. If it's a short question or you prefer to verify who we are, you can phone us on either the 4842 number, which is Diane's WhatsApp number, or you can call me on the 0525 number, which is my WhatsApp number. Otherwise, email us at an address.